Plot summary of Brooklyn by Colm Tóibín. Ailey'S Lacey is a young woman who has never left her home in Enniscorthy, Ireland. She lives with her mother and her well-liked and confident older sister, Rose. Ailey'S doesn't have a job yet, but she is studying to become a bookkeeper. Rose, on the other hand, works in an office in town. But there aren't any jobs available, so she takes a job at a grocery store owned by Miss Kelly, who is a proud social climber. Every Sunday, she works at the cash register while Miss Kelly talks to her customers. Depending on their social status, she treats each person differently. Aileys tells her mother and Rose about her day while acting like Miss Kelly at dinner, which makes them laugh. Her mom and Rose find these impressions especially funny because Miss Kelly was rude to Rose when she came into the store and they don't like her. Rose doesn't like that Aileys works in the shop because of this, so she makes plans with Father Flood, an Irish priest who lives in Brooklyn, New York, to help Aileys move to the United States. Father Flood and Rose work together to help Aileys get ready for her move to Father Flood's parish in Brooklyn, where she will live and work. In the days before she leaves, she hangs out with her friend Nancy, who is starting a relationship with George Sheridan, the most popular single man in town. So that Nancy can meet George, Aileys even takes Nancy to a local dance. Aileys stands awkwardly next to George's friend Jim Farrell, who ignores her as Nancy and George dance. When Aileys starts getting ready to leave for America, none of this will really matter. At the same time, though, she has reservations about her departure. One night, Rose helps her pack and insists on giving her jewelry. This makes Aileys realize that Rose should be the one leaving, not her. Rose would do very well in America, after all. Worse, Aileys suddenly realizes that Rose is making a sacrifice by setting up for her to go to Brooklyn. This is because Rose will have to stay with their mother and won't be able to get married. When Aileys realizes how important her leaving is, she wishes she could say she doesn't even want to go. However, she knows that would upset both Rose and her mother, who have decided to do everything they can to give her this chance. She decides not to say anything about her worries because of this. Aileys leaves Enniscorthy and meets her brother, Jack, in Liverpool, England. They spend the day together before she boards a ship to America. As they talk, Jack says that he was sad when he first left home to work in Birmingham, even though he never said this in any of his letters. But thank goodness, this feeling didn't last long. Aileys thinks about this later, when she settles into her third-class cabin on the ocean liner and realizes that she will be alone in Brooklyn if she gets homesick. Georgina walks into the cabin as she thinks about this. Georgina has been on several transatlantic flights and knows how to sneak into the first-class lounge. Aileys, on the other hand, is polite and says she'd rather stay in the third-class cabin. Georgina stays in first class while Aileys gets seasick that night. Worse, her neighbors have locked the bathroom that she shares with another room, so she pukes all over the cabin and in the hallway. The next day, Georgina comes back to the boat and tells Aileys that everyone is sick. She says that the boat is moving through a terrible storm that will keep going for a few more days. She says there's nothing they can do to stop throwing up, but she promises the pain will go away in time. Aileys only has to wait it out. Aileys moves to Brooklyn and lives in a house owned by Mrs. Kehoe, an Irish woman in Father Flood's parish. There are two older Irish women, Miss McAdam and Sheila Heffernan, and two younger women, Diana and Patty, who live with her. A woman named Miss Keegan lives in the basement and doesn't talk much. At first, Aileys is too busy to think much about Ireland. This is because Father Flood gets her a job at Bartocci's, a department store, where she works on the sales floor and has to work hard to look happy or her boss, Miss Fortini, will tell her off for not having the right attitude. At some point, though, she gets letters from her mother, Rose, and Jack all at the same time. She reads them one by one and gets a strong feeling of homesickness. She remembers that Jack said he was sad when he left home for the first time, and she thinks about writing to him, but decides he's too far away to help. She decides not to tell anyone in her family about her sadness because she doesn't want to worry them. Aileys tries to hide her sadness at work because she feels alone and cut off from the world, but Miss Fortini sees her and tells her to follow her downstairs. Since Ailey's has never been anywhere but Ireland, Miss Fortini thinks she misses her family and home. She then calls Father Flood and the owner's daughter, Miss Bartacci. Miss Bartacci then talks to Mr. Bartacci, who tells her that Ailey's can spend the day at home. Soon after, Father Flood goes to Bartacci's and talks to Ailey's. He tells her that he should have checked on her and that it's okay for her to be sad. He tells her that everyone gets homesick, but that it will go away, especially if she keeps busy. He then signs her up for night classes at Brooklyn College, where she takes the classes she needs to become a certified bookkeeper. In the months that follow, Ailey's homesickness gets better as she focuses on her studies. Father Flood starts holding dances at the church around this time, and Ailey's has to go. She went to the first one with Miss McAdam and Sheila. For the second one, she pretended to be sick. On the night of the third dance, Mrs. Kehoe asks Ailey's to take Dolores, a new tenant that everyone in the house doesn't like because she pays part of her rent by cleaning for Mrs. Kehoe. Ailey's agrees to take Dolores because she doesn't know how to say no, but she leaves her when a young man asks her to dance. Tony is his name, and it's clear that he's interested in Ailey's when he says that he tried to find her the week before but couldn't. They dance all night, getting close during slow songs, and then he walks her home and tells her he's Italian, not Irish. Before they say goodbye, they make plans to get together for dinner the week before the dance. The relationship between Ailey's and Tony grows slowly but surely. In contrast to Ailey's, he is honest about how he feels and is eager to tell her how much he likes her. As their relationship grows, Ailey's writes private letters to her sister Rose about Tony, answering her questions. She doesn't like having to tell Rose that Tony is a plumber, though. In the meantime, she doesn't tell her mother about her boyfriend. One night, Father Flood goes out of his way to meet Tony, and Ailey's knows that this is because Rose asked him to. But Father Flood likes him right away, and Ailey's thinks that Rose should learn that you can't always judge a person by their job. Even though she's crazy about Tony, she's scared when he starts telling her he loves her and talks about having kids with her in a casual way. She doesn't answer at first, but she does tell him that she loves him, but she's not ready to talk about having kids yet. Ailey's is getting close to the end of her second year in Brooklyn when she hears that Rose died while she was sleeping. When she calls home, her mother tells her that Rose had a heart problem that she didn't tell anyone about. In the days to come, Ailey's doesn't know what to do. She knows she should go back home to be with her mother, but she doesn't want to leave her life in Brooklyn. She sneaks Tony into her basement bedroom around this time because she doesn't want to be alone, and they end up having sex. After that, she knows that Mrs. Kehoe heard them and must have told Father Flood, because he starts to avoid her. So, to make things right, she goes to see Father Flood and tells him she wants to go home and see her mother because she doesn't know what else to say. He seems to have decided to forgive her, because he helps her persuade Miss Fortini to let her take a month off work. Tony asks Ailey's to marry him when she tells him she's going back to Ireland. He insists that they can do it in secret and then have a real ceremony when she gets back. At first, she wasn't sure, but then she agreed, and they went ahead with the plan right before she left. But when she gets to Ireland, she doesn't tell her mom about Tony. Instead, she helps her write thank you cards to the many people who came to Rose's funeral to pay their respects. Later, she sees her friend Nancy, who tells her that she is getting married to George in a few weeks and that Ailey's mother said that Ailey's would be there. Ailey's agrees to go to the wedding because she thinks it won't hurt to put off going back to Brooklyn. As the wedding gets closer, Ailey's spends more time with Nancy, George, and Jim, who is interested in her. At first, their relationship is simple and friendly, but they soon start dating, and one night, after a dance, Ailey's kisses Jim. So, everyone in town gets excited about the idea of Ailey's marrying Jim, since no one knows that she is already married to Tony, to whom she has stopped writing letters. Even after the wedding is over, Ailey's still doesn't buy a ticket back to America. But finally, Miss Kelly calls her to her store and tells her that Mrs. Kehoe is her cousin and that she and Mrs. Kehoe keep in touch and share news with each other. She says she told Mrs. Kehoe that Aile's has started going out with Jim. She then says that Mrs. Kehoe told her about Tony, so Aile's runs out of the grocery store, buys a ticket back to Brooklyn, and tells her mother that she's married. The next morning, she tells Jim she has to leave by leaving a letter at his door, and then she heads back to America.
About the author. Colm Tóibín was born in 1955 in Enniscorthy, which is in the Irish county of Wexford. He is the third of 5 children. He didn't learn to read until he was 9 years old, when he also started to stutter. At 15, he went to St. Peter's College, where he lived in a dorm for 2 years and fell in love with poetry. When he was done with high school, he got a job as a bartender and spent the summer reading a lot of Ernest Hemingway. He moved to Barcelona for a short time after being moved by Hemingway's writing, but he first went to University College Dublin. His time in Barcelona shaped both his first book, The South, and his second, Homage to Barcelona. After going back to Ireland and working for a while towards a master's degree, he dropped out of school to become a reporter. He was in charge of the Irish magazine McGill in the 1980s. Brooklyn, Tóibín's most famous book, came out in 2009 and was a big hit. He has won many awards for his writing, which includes novels, plays, essays, and short stories. He has also written 9 novels.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.